Day 2 of the February 97 7-day retreat in Springwater. Quite a while after the talk yesterday, I realized I had not really said much or anything about authority. At least it wasn't recorded in memory. And nothing about what is our relationship to each other if not based on authority. What I mean by the word authority is no, I want to start this way. In talking with each other the way we did yesterday, here in the talk, because in the talk you don't say anything, but we can still communicate with each other. And in group meetings, one-on-one meetings, what is said is not said in order to convince anybody, to make an opinion prevail, to establish a doctrine, a dogma, something to be accepted. But speaking to each other is an invitation to look directly, alone and together. Questions are asked, statements are made, but not as impositions, but as invitations to look, to listen, to find out for oneself the truth of oneself, of this moment. The nature of illusion about oneself and each other, to come upon it directly as it appears in this body-mind. Ideas usually in the head, and yet an idea appearing in the head has its immediate impact on the organism. And an agitated or hurting, paining, excited organism can generate ideas about itself and others. You got me all excited. You hurt me. So to become cognizant of it, but cognizant not just meaning intellectually, but in touch with the process as it happens. Because at such a moment of in-touchness with the process, one will not be fooled or deceived by thoughts and ideas that we share, not just my own personal ideas. Most thoughts and ideas are shared things. Where did we get our ideas from originally? To question it sometime and let it reveal itself. Of course, one may be a very astute artist, poet, scientist, and maybe see something new, but the moment it is expressed in words or image, it's shareable and it can become fixated. In other words, sticking to the picture or to the word and removed or never in touch with what this actually came from an immediate perception. So can we work this way? Even though we will observe, because we are products of authority, how we crave authority. We want somebody to tell us what is right, what we should do, how to think, what to think, up to a point, up to a limit. Or we want to rebel against authority. There may be such a tremendous impulse of rebellion lodged in this organism and mind that it seeks to establish authority in order to knock it down. Trying to ever repetitively do something one couldn't do as a child, maybe. All kinds of possibilities for the reason for it. But whatever the origin of it, one can observe it as it happens. It was such an interesting thing after leaving the Zen center. Actually, many people did not come along with me because of necessarily wanting to work in this way or because of being skeptical or done with Buddhism, but because it was seen as rebelling against authority, and that was gratifying. That's what one wanted to do, wanted to join. And it did not take very long before the rebellion was directed at each other, at me. You lose one target, you find another. To watch ourselves carefully, scientifically, if you will. By scientifically, I mean not biased, although there may be very few scientists who are completely unbiased. One wants to become famous, wants to find something new. And that is a bias. But here to watch neutrally one's desire for authority, either to follow it or to knock it down. A habitual expectation of finding refuge in authority, which is very, very ancient. And always a movement away from directly looking, directly wondering, directly in touch with one's confusion, without just wanting someone else to tell what the right way or the right point of view is. Rather to sit with the confusion, like with a muddy puddle. Which is not wise to stir. One finds that out very quickly if you try to control that puddle by stirring it. The clouds will be moving around in there visibly. But letting it be, leaving it alone, watching it, even hiking away for a while and coming back. There were no winds or rain to agitate it. It will have settled out and be clear, reflecting the clouds and trees accurately. So, I haven't looked at the whole thing, and let me say this also pretty much at the beginning, No one can ever say the whole thing of anything. It's always only sketchy attempts to express something. The whole thing defies expression. Always still another thing to consider, infinite. So sometimes people have told me, I don't agree with what you say about authority, because you do speak authoritatively. A certain strength which is convincing. And it is good to hear somebody in that mode of talking convincingly, with strength, conviction. That's what I want to hear, somebody told me. That's what I appreciate. All right. I am not going to change my way of talking in order to avoid being taken for an authority. And authoritative may be a better word, although recently somebody told me that wasn't that a good word. So we'll leave the words floating around. To see what one is talking about up to a point brings strength and generates energy. But it is not, the strength and intensity of expression is not used to rope anybody in, to get followers or adherents, believers. And yet, all of us know that we have heard people say or write something which sounds so true, and yet one can't get one's hand on it, can't quite grasp it, can't verify it, and yet it rings true. I think we mentioned that yesterday. To let it sit there. The brain will hold it. It has a huge capacity. Brain scientists tell us much more unused than even used capacity. So has a space there for holding what rings true but is not clear at this point. Or may never be clear, may turn out not to be the right expression, but to hold it there, how shall I say, tentatively, not knocking it down, not accepting it, but wondering. It does a sort of work in there. I found this myself, because at the right opportunity it'll pop up and raise that question anew, or the question drops because something is seen so clearly that the original statement need not be doubted any longer. So what is our relationship with each other if we put away traditional relationships for a so-called spiritual center? I don't use that word, you may have noticed that, but it is being used a lot. So for the purpose, right now we'll use it. That's our relationship, where traditionally there is a hierarchical relationship between teacher and student. With all the paraphernalia that goes with it. Different garments, robes, appellations, assumptions about the teacher, assumptions about the student, and among the students, different gradations. Remember at the center where several of us trained, you couldn't be a member right away. First you had to be a trial member, and then a new member. To get to retreat, there were certain requirements of length of time being there, and so forth and so forth. All the assumptions the assumptions of what is needed to relate in this big work of finding out who we are. Tremendous amount of assumptions. But it's not only the assumptions, it's also something for the ego to be somebody, to advance from freshman to sophomore and treat the freshman the way one was treated oneself. That all goes on. Sub rosa. May not be looked at, but is rich ground for looking, rich soil for finding out about human nature. With its ingrained competitiveness. I don't know whether it's totally natural. We are told by anthropologists that there used to be societies in which competitiveness was very low, maybe non-existent, very democratically organized. Not even organized. People would come together, I read, sit in a circle and talk for several hours, no agenda, nothing was achieved. But having talked together for a while and leaving again, things functioned well again in the group. In a so-called Neolithic group, but contemporary. So what's our relationship? Here we don't sit in a circle, although sometimes on Sundays when we have talk and discussion afterwards, we do manage to sit in a circle. It's a pretty big thing, and it gets very distant. The diameter gets large. So first of all, to allow the assumptions to become visible, it is sort of conditioned into this body. Somebody is sitting in front. As it happens, well, there's people on chairs here. Didn't used to be. If you sat on something like this, in former times you're the only one who was elevated. Because in Zen you sit on a platform, on a podium, the others don't. So you're higher. It's ancient. So to trace this archaic conditioning in ourselves, to attribute something to another and to oneself due to forms that are perceived, sitting arrangements, just the brain jumping from association to association. And if that isn't noticed and questioned, assumptions are operating and prevent this immediacy of being here, which is our true relationship, to be here together, non-hierarchically, in a non-graded fashion, not beginners and advanced ones, although some people may have been here for who knows how many years, and somebody here for the first time. Those are the first things that I wanted to introduce in starting a new center, to listen to newcomers, because they may tell us something about ourselves that we may not see. We're so used to our ways. This is how a lot of the things changed here. By not giving sort of the cold shoulder to somebody new who dares open their mouth to criticize something or question something, which was not possible in the traditional setup. Heaven forbid. So, what's our relationship right now? Due to all kinds of structures in the mind expressed in the body, there may not be, or one may not realize the immediacy of being here on a common ground. So can I put it tentatively into these words, relating out of mutual respect for each other and friendship? You may say, wait a minute, I don't feel that friendship. I've never felt it. Sometimes people come here and say, I've been numb all my life. I don't know what friendship or love is. Can one respect that? Really listen with respect. Respect means looking anew, listening anew is what is meant by relating respectfully to each other, sort of from the bottom inside, attend to each other and to oneself at the same time. So, if anyone says right now, I don't feel respect or friendship, that can be respected. May be mutual, may not be mutual. We'll start where we are, don't we? Where else could we start? From ideas, of course, of how we should be, and continue living in those and ignore roughshod what's there in us all. One of the first questions of many people who come here for the first time, and not necessarily only from someone who's here for the first time, is what do I do here? What is this all about? One may have come with a motive, but sometimes in sitting quietly, it sort of washes out, it bleaches. One can't find it anymore. Particularly in the beginning, as some people report, they feel frazzled, drowsy, not quite present, tired. Maybe one isn't drinking caffeine right now, and there's a period of withdrawal, as well as the withdrawal from our usual stimulation. So then, in a state like that, the desire becomes very strong for someone to tell me what to do. I don't want to waste my time. Do you give a practice? I don't. Even though I do not object, how could I, to someone bringing their practice from another tradition or another center here, and everybody is free to do what they wish to do. Don't have to come to talks, which may be challenging. What one is doing. So, is there a practice to assign here? Somebody asked yesterday something like, I heard a teacher talk of 100,000 practices, vast numbers of practices. Maybe it's needed because there's so many different conditions which we find ourselves. Could there be one that covers them all? Of course there is. But it's not a practice, it's just attention, awareness, presence, being here open in the midst of what is happening, which sounds paradoxical. The midst of what's happening is anything but openness, it's confusion, wanting, fearing. How can there be openness in the midst of that? That's the conundrum. But not to be figured out intellectually. It defies intellectual solution, and yet is possible. Because what we choose to call awareness right now, presence, attention, simple being here, that's always here. To be come upon, to be discovered. It may be the very ground from which we spring into confusion and the turbulence resulting from confusion, the turbulence of thinking causing turbulence in the organism and turbulence in our relationships with each other. And finding a moment, everybody came here to find this moment of quietness. It's offered, it's here. Very palpable. This hall, the very first evening, was so quiet, so still, even though lots of thoughts were probably bouncing around. Lots of emotions or numbness manifesting in different organisms, and yet it was so quiet. The whole universe reverberated with quietness, spaciousness. Underneath or in through all the agitation, liveliness. Some people say, why do you always use negative terms? I don't mean to. But that's what brings us here, is negative problems. Most of us, not everybody. So, with what is happening right this moment, and one may not be aware of what's happening, one just feels numb or unhappy or driven, in pain, to sit down, not knowing what to do, and wondering what is going on, inside, outside. Like that cloudy pool. Clouding under a clear sky. And learning from moment to moment. Because as one sits quietly, not immediately, this is not to be measured in time. One may find out that time itself is the activity of thinking. Without thinking time, there is no time. There's only being here. So not to get all roped into time, how little time I have, how much time it takes. Just to be here, this moment, without time. Allowing what happens to happen in stillness, which may not be so perceptible because it's so agitated or numb. And yet, the people who have reported about agitation or numbness have reported about it. How could one report about it if it wasn't perceived somehow to be so? So this attention is always there. Awareness is always there. But it's overlaid by stuff which can become clear, clarify, be seen what it is, for what it is, in quiet sitting or walking or being. maybe sleeping. Sometimes somebody will tell me I woke up and even though I went to bed befuddled, I woke up and everything was clear. Sounds enviable. Because then the question will come very quickly if we're talking with each other. What is the practice? One talks about attention. Can one practice attention? Is it possible to do something to bring it about more often and for longer periods of time? The time sense is so dominant in us. We live by that, so we express it in our questions. More often and for longer periods of time. How can I be attentive that way? Because I can tell the benefits and beauty of attention, of being here. Yesterday in a group discussion, someone mentioned that strong emotions, anger or erotic arousal, may generate so much energy that for a moment there is awareness. Because if we thought that we could generate awareness that way, that it was a causal affair, a strong emotion so I can get attention or awareness, not that the person advocated that. That could get sort of difficult to try, although there have been attempts at that by some spiritual teachers to arouse emotions, sexual drives, to be what? Have fun, enjoy oneself, get release, bring attention to what? To learn more about strong emotions, but that wasn't how it was said. I was just questioning whether strong emotions are a door to awareness. Awareness is always there. Anything can be a door. But to really understand strong emotions, not just expressing them, relieving oneself through them, that takes attention, awareness, holding still as it were, not moving away. And see what happens. But the question was, can some practice lead to more attention? And the only answer that I can give honestly is being attentive can lead to more attention. And I don't say it facetiously. I've observed in recent years that this body learns to conduct itself naturally in new ways in the presence of attention. Because to that state of being which we call awareness corresponds an organism. Organism isn't left behind, dangling someplace. It learns to, whatever word you want to put to it, to open up, to conduct energies differently than normally, to understand intrinsically, wisely, when it is not needed to conduct input into an interpreting brain. When that brain can be at ease, it doesn't need to interpret. This is all learned in an amazing fashion by this organism without receiving any instruction about it. This is, of course, where the danger lies. We want to learn that. And then it goes through the head, but this learning doesn't go through the head. It happens in the presence of awareness on its own, spontaneously. And wouldn't work if one was trying to understand it intellectually. Or would want to follow instructions how to lead oneself to an aware body, sort of putting the cart before the horse. So, in sitting quietly, listening quietly, something takes place in this organism, provided one is not just continuing one's emotional vendettas against somebody or erotic dreams about someone. Then the body is in its usual stream of conducting itself. Could one say that since our learning on this earth started, the body has been trained, conditioned to only be attentive in a limited way, attentive to its needs and the needs of the group, its wants, desires, but not attentive to the whole. We have no training in that, do we? And coming to retreats or sitting quietly for oneself is an opportunity for the body to learn something new on its own, in its own amazing wisdom, which of course is not separate from the wisdom of awareness. We will end here for today.